Real estate agents, if you're struggling to grow your business, it might be because you're having a difficult time following up and engaging and nurturing your leads, not just because you might need more leads. You might need both, but I've seen in my past 5, 6, 7 years of working with real estate agents that more often you have plenty of leads available to you. You're just not having a good system or a successful system or process of following up with them to make sure that those leads end up working with you and not one of the other thousands of agents in your market. And if you don't know me, my name's Jarvis. I run Jarvis Media Consolidated. We help real estate agents hit amazing results on social media. Here are some of our stats here down below, and you can check us out if you're interested. But let's jump in right now. The first thing that a lot of agents that I speak to misunderstand about leads is that one, it depends on the kind of lead. Not all leads are created equal. If you have a referral, for instance, a referral here, they're going to have a high level of trust because the person referring them has a high level of trust with them. Their friend or family member has their best interest in mind. They know that. So there's a high level of trust because it's been imbued onto you, right? Also, there's generally a high or a fast timeline, or I should put that as a low timeline here. And that's because if they're talking about it with their friends or family, they're probably pretty serious, right? They're not in the early stages. They're probably in the medium to late stages of looking to buy or sell a home. So what ends up happening is that you don't need a great system of follow-up to see success because the hardest things in terms of their timeline and their level of trust there are already kind of nailed for you. And that's why 80 to 90% of the deals that are done come from referrals or previous clients because there's already a high level of trust. And when a previous client reaches out, there's also a generally a good timeline, which brings us to a previous client. Obviously, very similar story here. We already have a high level of trust because if you are still chatting with a previous client, it's because you probably liked them and they probably liked you. You probably did a good job for them. And so what's important to understand here is that, yes, you already have the high level of trust. That's why it almost seems like it's a guarantee, right? Now, the difficulty there is that most people only buy or sell a home 3 times in their lifetime in the US. And so that's not a whole lot of business for our entire 40, 50-year career as a real estate agent. But also, their timeline could go either way, right? Because if you're kind of being really on top of things and you're reaching out to them, it might be a really long timeline before ultimately, you end up helping them again. It's probably going to be like 8 or so years until they buy or sell again. And so because of that, your timeline could take a really long time. However, if a previous client reaches out to you, their timeline is probably pretty darn quick, right? So sometimes it can be good and sometimes it can be bad. And that's why for a previous client, you're going to have a very different amount of follow-up for your lead there. Now, what most people struggle with, as I totally erase my board here, what most people struggle with is new leads. They ultimately don't understand that new leads are going to be very different kind of follow-up. And a lot of people feel like they're bothering or they're pestering their lead there, but that's only because there's not enough trust building and there's not enough volume of overall good content, high value content. Because listen, no one gets upset about getting something that they like all the time, right? Nobody gets upset about that. People get upset when they're getting a bunch of stuff that they don't like all the time. That's where it feels like spam, and that's where ultimately you really just end up pissing off your leads, which is very not good. So what ends up happening is that you really can't have too much follow-up. It can only be too low of value or too boring or too spam like. And so when we talk about like in just to kind of keep in our flow here, when we talk about a referral, we can just have a fairly low amount of reach out, right? A fairly low amount of reaching out slash follow up because there's high intent there, right? We already know they're referred to us, and they're generally their timeline is going to make a lot of sense. That we don't really need to work those too hard, and that's why again most agents have the best success with those because they're already not reaching out enough and they're not having enough follow up, which we'll talk about. Now, for a previous client. I think it's obviously really helpful to have a decent amount of follow-up, like a monthly thing that checks in, which a lot of agents cover automatically with some sort of, you know, valuable, consistent follow-up. Think like like a newsletter, market update, maybe specific to their property that you help them in. or whatever it may be. That's what I would kind of recommend for like a previous lead. Now, again, most importantly, and the thing that people end up getting wrong the most is a new lead. Now, a new lead, you need to have a high level of volume. Why? Because you're one agent out of the thousands of agents out there. And just because they became a lead for you does not mean that they're ready to buy or sell instantly. A lot of times, what ends up happening is that people think that when a new lead comes in, it's like, oh, well, they're a brand new lead. They must want to work with me immediately. And then they get really ticked off when that doesn't happen and they say, oh, these must be fake leads, or these must be ghost leads, or all of these terms that happen that come out from when a lead isn't working for you. In reality, you're probably just not really doing what ends up getting somebody to the finish line. And there's a couple different reasons for that. So to understand this, let me just kind of preface here. When you are reaching out to a potential buyer or seller lead, right? So somebody who, and this is a quick distinction, a lead is just somebody you can contact, but we're really talking about qualified leads. So these are people who have expressed interest in you. They're not just a number that you bought somewhere. This is somebody who has said, oh, I'm interested in this person. I've downloaded their lead magnet, whatever it may be, right? Somebody has some level of quality to them and some level of intent, even if not might not be high. So when we have a new lead, um, it's not that Facebook leads are ghost leads, or Google leads are ghost leads, or leads from cold email are ghost leads. Again, once they respond, because we're not talking about those leads. We're talking about just cold reach out, they respond, now that we consider them a qualified lead. It's not that these systems don't work. It's that you are not working them. Because, name me any system, I'll show you an agent who has seen insane success from it if they understand and take the time to learn how to work that system, because every system is different. Now, a new lead, what you need to understand is that people like to window shop, and they will oftentimes not end up working with a real estate agent or saying, hey, let's work together, until they're like, oh yeah, I'm finally ready to buy or sell. Like, I have saved up the money, I have done X, Y, and Z. But the problem is the time where somebody becomes a lead and the time where somebody becomes a client, a new lead especially, it can be a very long timeline, right? It can take a long time for that to happen. And so the problem is you don't want to fill in this time with spam, 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 because ultimately they just won't become a client. They'll be like, wow, this guy's really annoying me. I really don't want to work with him or her. But instead, if you end up giving a bunch of resources that actually help them, that actually make their life a lot better, then that is ultimately how you continue this timeline. And what's really cool is you might even speed up the timeline for them to actually become a client, because you're giving them content and you're giving them resources that help them in their home buying journey. We already know that they want to buy or sell. They have a level of intent. We just need to get them to the finish line and get them to see results quickly so that they can actually want to work with us. Now, what does this look like? Well, think about the buyer or seller. If they've expressed interest and if you know that they're looking to buy or they're looking to sell, then it's really helpful to give them resources that help them along that way. And one of the best campaigns that I saw with an agent that I worked with, where we got him 4 transactions in the first month that we were working with them, is that he was just a monster at following up. But when he followed up, it was all high intent based or high value based. So it would be him and a person that he hired from like the Philippines to follow up with them, whatever they're called, virtual assistant, VA. And as soon as they became a lead, they would call him 4 times on day 1, 4 times on day 2, and then once a day for 8 weeks. So think about that level of volume. A lot of agents watching this have called their leads 3 times total, and they said, wow, this guy's really not interested. These guys are calling 8 weeks every single day for 8 weeks before they say, okay, now they're a cold lead, right? Because they understand that they showed intent. We just have to make sure that volume is not an issue. Volume is not the reason they're not going to work with us. And on top of that, we have to lead with high intent. So they're not saying like, hey, are you ready to buy or sell a home? Are you ready to buy or sell a home? They're ready to buy or sell a home. But it's instead, hey, like, let's have a conversation. Let's see where you're at. Let's make a plan for you. Let's understand, hey, are you interested in this kind of thing? Are you interested in this kind of thing? Hey, did you know about this program? Because you might not actually need as much of a down payment as you might think that you do. Or, hey, do you know that there's this tax incentive or there's this grant incentive that's provided in our local area or this different thing that you might not be aware of because you're not constantly in the real estate market like me, but you might really value this. This might be really beneficial for you. What's really cool about this is that most real estate agents, you guys know of all of the things that are available to folks. And a lot of times we don't realize that the person who's looking to buy or sell a home has no freaking idea about these different things. But what's cool is that if you provide that value, if you provide that kind of insider secret that you might not think is a secret, but they don't know it, then they're going to immediately associate that value with you. What's so funny is that even if so many different agents that they could work with could provide that sort of value, they won't necessarily assume that. They'll say, oh, wow, this guy, John or Jane, they are the ones who said, oh, I could get this awesome grant program. Well, I definitely want to work with them because they obviously know how that works. And that grant program is really helpful. I'm really interested in that thing. So these different things are how you can follow up. And that's why it doesn't matter how many times you follow up, or I should say, you can't follow up too often. You can only follow up too poorly or with too much spam or with not enough value. And that is where you really need to understand the kind of lead that you're getting and the amount of times you need to follow up. And now I always recommend, I already kind of alluded to this too, you want to have a conversation around working together, or around talking, I should say. You want to have target them to have a conversation, to build a plan, to build a strategy, not buying or selling. Because what happens a lot of times when you say, hey, like let's have a let's talk about real estate. Hey, let's talk about buying or selling your home. Hey, you expressed interest here. Like here are these homes available to you. A lot of people are going to be like, hey, dude, like I'm a little interested, but like I'm not there yet, right? But if we change that, if we say, hey, I know you're probably not looking to buy or sell like in the next few months, but here are some things that take a few months to kind of plan out that might be helpful for you. Do you have 5 minutes and I can share you these things that might save you a lot of money? But by framing it that way, or saying even, hey, like I saw you respond to this thing. I know you're probably shopping around a bunch of different agents. No matter who you pick, I really want to make sure you're aware of this grant because I think it might be able to help you. By framing it that way, you're immediately pivoting yourself not as like, hey, work with me, work with me, work with me, but instead, hey, make sure that you know about this thing. Or, hey, no matter what happens, like you're definitely going to want to take advantage of this thing. And just providing that level of value. Stop thinking about it as, how do I make them my client? But instead say, how do I make sure they have the best transaction possible? And what's really cool is you might not think that that gives you a competitive edge, especially if you're saying, hey, no matter who you work with, make sure you know this. But it really does, because it increases trust and it gives you a reason to follow back up, which is massively important. And also it shows that, you know your stuff. Like, why are they going to chance and hope that this other agent knows about this awesome grant program? You've already shown that you do. And that's a high level of trust building and expertise that is going to be really valuable. Because at the end of the day, when somebody wants to buy or sell a house, they don't care what agent that they work with. They're not like, man, I can't wait to buy a house so I can work with Jane. Like, they don't give a hell. They don't give a shit. They don't really care at all. They really want to work with, or they just want to buy or sell a house. And a lot of people don't understand the value of working with an agent. So you need to do the work to show them that. And especially if your lead magnet on your ads is something like download this thing or, get this free resource, then keep in mind that there's a big separation between the lead that you want to work with and them wanting to talk with you, right? Because they're downloading it because they're interested in real estate, not interested in you. Now, if you run an ad that's designed to be like, hey, have a conversation with me, you're going to get less leads. It's going to be a higher cost per lead, but at least you're getting folks who said, yeah, I'm interested in talking with this person. That's a whole different strategy I'll talk about in a different video. But most people are running some sort of lead magnet, some sort of free thing that the person gets to show that they're interested in real estate and to kind of, get their resources, their information so we can contact them. But when that's happening, then ultimately you need to understand that there's a bigger gap between you and their goals. Like, their goal is not to work with you. Their goal is not to talk with you. Their goal is to be interested in real estate and eventually buy or sell. So we need to position ourselves through proof that we are the right move for them. So hope this was helpful, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Bye.